Hi, this is Regeline Sabat, also known as Gigi. You're listening to Walk With Me podcast. My guest today is Karl Pontau. Karl Pontau is the owner and president of Squatch and Stretch Productions, and Karl is a storyteller and motion graphic artist. Welcome to the podcast, Karl.
Thank you.
You're welcome, and we're honored to have you here tonight. Now, why don't you
Glad
start
to
off
be
by
here.
telling us about you and where you're from?
Sure, I have a little backstory that I usually use to introduce myself and my business. I can dive right into that. Does that sound good?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So I've been an artist my entire life. I grew up drawing, painting, sculpting, big Legos kid. And I got my passion for storytelling from my dad. He's a really good storyteller. And I knew I wanted to study animation when I saw the first Toy Story film. I was like, ooh, I got to do that. That's so cool. And then beginning of 2002, I started to feel like something wasn't quite right with me physically. I had been a competitive swimmer my whole life, so I knew what I was supposed to feel like. And it wasn't like, oh, my shoulder kind of hurts. It was just like a general blah feeling. And so by August, they still hadn't figured out what was wrong with me, but I'd lost 50 pounds and had sunken cheeks and eyes. I was really pale, started to get really bad headaches. So my parents took me for an MRI. We were waiting around for another appointment when my pediatrician called and said he was going to drive up from another hospital to come talk with us. And we saw him walking up with this big envelope in his hands. You could tell he'd been crying. And he brought us into a little side meeting room. And I remember I was sitting knee to knee with him in this big U-shaped chair with really high armrests, kind of leaning forward. And he pulls out the results of the MRI and shows me I have 2 brain tumors. And it felt like I got punched in the chest. I actually moved backwards in my chair. Then for the next 2 weeks, everything sounded like the adults from Peanuts, just kind of wah, 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 because I've never had the flu, never broken any major bones, never been stung by a bee. I'm pretty sure I've never been bitten by a mosquito. So to get brain tumor diagnosis at 15, which is a complete sucker punch out of nowhere. But I got so much help from friends and family, and like my high school adjusted my schedule and got me a tutor so I could still graduate on time. And people I barely knew were giving food and gifts and other support. So it really inspired me to want to try and give back and help as many people as I could, because I'd probably be dead if it wasn't for all the help that I got. And then in undergraduate school, as I was studying animation, there was a big student digital art and design competition I participated in with a big screening at the end of like 1,000 people in this big auditorium. I knew maybe 10. But when everyone laughed at the joke in my animation, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I can connect with people and have a bigger impact on the world around me with storytelling and animation. So after grad school, I started my business, and I like working with marketing, branding, and PR companies, helping their clients with better animation content for their websites and social media, stuff like that. If I can help them reach more people, and more people in the community get their problem solved, my client's business does better. I get a happy client, everyone wins, and it's just a way for me to have a bigger positive impact on the world around me, and that's really why I do what I do.
I love it. That's very powerful. Now, can you tell us more about how you overcame the brain tumor diagnosis, and also, what else helped you along the way?
Yeah, so that, it was definitely the most challenging thing I've ever been through. And I had the biopsy surgery. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks because one of the parts that got damaged in my brain was my pituitary gland. So my hormones were all over the place, which is why I was feeling so blah. And so it took a while for them to get the supplement levels correct, so kind of my body would stabilize. And then I had 4 rounds of chemotherapy and 20 days of radiation. Unfortunately, they were very treatable tumors, so it was fairly light chemo and radiation, low doses and stuff. So I was very fortunate in that sense, where it was very treatable. It was actually one of the weirdest things I've ever been told by another human being. After about 2 weeks in the ICU, the doctor came back with the prognosis and said, "You got the good type of cancer," which at the time I was like, "What?" But then I've realized now that it's could have been a lot worse. So in some sense, I'm really thankful for how it turned out. And also, it's one of those things that I wouldn't want to go through it again. I wouldn't wish on anyone else, but I can't imagine not having gone through it because of how much of an impact it's had on my life, and how much, I think, better a person I am than I would be otherwise, just because it helps me realize what's important in life and kind of how I want to be spending my time, and give me a lot more drive and focus than I think I would have had otherwise. And so it's really been it's kind of like what we're all going through now with the COVID stuff, is kind of adjusting to a new normal and getting a lot of help from people when I needed it. Like my family and friends were great. I'm still really close to people I was friends with in high school who helped get me through that whole experience. And just my immediate family and extended family are all very close, because they really rallied around me and helped me have everything I needed to get through it. It was definitely a group effort. And just people like could come to visit and bring food, like I said, and gifts, and there's people I barely knew or hadn't seen for a long time were willing to give and support me when I really needed it. So it shows how much stronger people are when they work together and are willing to help other people out, not because they expect something back in return, but just giving for the sake of giving. And that's something I really incorporate into my business plan and how I want to, the impact I want to have on the world as my company. I actually have a goal in my business plan to, it's been kind of delayed because of COVID, but one of my goals is to be able to like be making enough money and to support myself, but I can afford to like go out to eat once a month and leave the waiter or waitress a $500 tip. What I want to be able to do is like a natural, like a regular habit thing, is just I want to be able to do that and be able to give back to people that I think could probably make more, maybe a bigger impact on their life than myself. And it's those little things where it's, you don't realize how some small gestures like that can have a huge impact on the quality of someone's day, and how those things ripple through communities and can really help. And I think just having that general attitude of giving and looking for ways to help other people is a mindset that I wish more people would adopt. And I think it's a sign of someone kind of being in the right mind space if they're looking for those sorts of opportunities.
Amen. That is very inspiring. Now, can you tell us more about the power of stories, internal and external?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the things that actually like really got me through the whole treatment process, the whole experience, was so I really like comedy and the storytelling. So I watched a lot of The Daily Show with Jon Stewart when I was going through chemo, and so it was like making me laugh and feel better, and just those sorts of like the news stories, or the like kind of comedic like the kind of fake news stories they do, not like fake news in today's terms, but it's kind of like the satirical take on the news that they would have and like the correspondents would do, really helped me get through the whole experience. And so it was I like the story's ability to just communicate information on such a deeper emotional level than just facts and statistics can. Our brains are wired for storytelling, where humans have been telling stories for as long as we've had like hunter-gatherer tribes, that sort of stuff. And so I think it's such a great way to communicate a message and really get people inspired and motivated to act and actually bring about change. I'm because of just what I've been through with the brain, I'm fascinated about how our brains work, and just as much as we like to think of ourselves as like rational or logical beings, we really like the emotional part of our brains, the limbic system, which is at the base here, is what makes all the decisions pretty much, and it controls emotion, doesn't talk to logic or reason or language. There's some reason that comes into it, but usually it's much later in the decision-making process than we're aware of. So if you're trying to really get people to like buy a product or service, or trying to convince someone like in a debate or an argument about why your position is like correct, or just why you feel a certain way, going about it with like just facts and figures is just not going to work, because how we make decisions, how we form beliefs is all based on emotion for the most part. So having a strong story that has like examples of real world implications of the position you're supporting, or the like product you're trying to sell, or the service of how it can help people, and really getting that emotional level for people is absolutely essential for pretty much all human interaction, and really making an impact on people's lives. You got to get to that part of the brain. And so I really am impressed by and appreciate the power stories have for like just affecting our emotional states, and really getting people like to feel a whole gamut of emotions, and also just inspiring a lot of action in people that might not have otherwise realized the importance of something they're being told if it wasn't for the story behind it.
That's right. And now, can you tell the audience where you're pointing now in your back of your head here?
Yeah, so the limbic system of the brain is basically the base. There's like 3 tiers of the brain. There's the upper brain, which controls like rational things, more like your conscious thoughts, and like your language is up there. Then there's the middle brain, and then the lower brain. And the lower brain is the part that makes the decisions. It's also considered like the reptile brain. It's the ones that controls like fight or flight, or the emotions, and a lot of like the kind of gut instinct sort of stuff is what controls the decision making. And then we will come up with the reasons, the rational reasons later on, but oftentimes there's actually a great book, I'm blanking on the title for it. I think it came from Predictably Irrational. It's a great book, but it talks about how people will come up with the reasons why they made a decision, oftentimes like late, like weeks or months after they've really made the decision, like in the emotional part of their brain, but other people around them can tell that they've made it, like it's buy a new house, buy a new car. People like make that decision months before they think they've made it, but it's this, their behavior changes and their mood changes and the way they respond to the subject changes, so people around them can tell, but the person themselves often has trouble realizing they've decided on something before like it gets to their upper brain. It's way more complicated than I could possibly explain here without a degree. And like but it's fascinating just understanding more about that is as part of someone who works in marketing content and telling stories is really important to understand the basics of how that works, because when you're trying to get someone to respond a certain way to a story, you got to know what the correct inputs are. Because even though we behave irrationally, it's still a system. We can still predict the responses. So I find that stuff fascinating, and I think just anyone who's looking to have better interactions with people, either like in the workplace or in relationships, would benefit from understanding more about those sorts of things. Because people, if you have like family members who've been like kind of bickering or fighting for a long time, oftentimes they're not fighting about the real issue that they're vocalizing the problems about. There's really something underlying that if you kind of realize what the real like inspiration is for, or the real like emotional reasons behind the conflict, you can actually resolve it. But just people usually don't think about it in that a depth. So I could blab about this for way longer than we have time on this show. So
No, that is very intriguing. Thank you for sharing that, Karl. Now, can you tell us more about why attitude is so important?
Yeah, so I think especially these days where everything's so like crazy and unusual, and the general feeling of like a lack of control over what's happening to people, I think it's really important for people to, instead of focusing on what they can't control and stressing about it, which is not productive, is to really focus on what they do have control over. And the first thing you can control is your attitude. And so one thing I've been doing a lot since about March, when things really start, like the shutdown happened, and has been working on so like kind of personal development stuff. And one of the things that we covered was kind of attitude control, and being more aware of and mindful of how I'm feeling and what sort of content I'm consuming. It's kind of like the whole adage of you are what you eat. Kind of your attitude is kind of what you take. If you're watching a lot of like negative news or like things that are making you stressed, you're going to think things are stressed and negative and bad. But if you focus on things that are positive or uplifting and optimistic, then you're going to have more of that mindset, because you'll basically, there's a great quote, I can't remember what it is verbatim, but paraphrasing is basically, you don't see the world as it is, you see the world as you are. So if you think the world is really negative and bad, you'll see negative and bad things, but it's because you're kind of focusing on those things when you look at the world. If you think things are really positive and uplifting and optimistic, you'll see those things when you look into the world. So if people want to, like make some change in the world, have some control over what happens, well, you can't necessarily affect something outside your sphere of influence. I can talk, really, I can. But you can change your attitude and focus on the control you have over yourself and your own mind. And by controlling that and making sure you're putting as much positivity and helpfulness and positive, like, and helping as many people as you can, and putting that out into the world more, you'll see it more around you because you'll be in that mindset. So I think, I've been working on growing my business a lot since February, and it obviously has not gone as I necessarily expected it to when I kind of made this big push starting in February, because they're going to be like in March, everything kind of went sideways. But I haven't like gotten down and like stuck in the negativity, and I didn't stop working towards my goals. I realized that the road would be a lot windier and more difficult than I originally thought it would. but I'm confident I can still achieve what I'm trying to achieve. It's going to take longer and be a lot more difficult than I expected, but that's when I kind of realized I needed to do more personal development and up my own game to kind of rise to the challenge. And so that's one thing I feel like really grateful about the whole brain tumor experience was I had some kind of a frame of reference for having my entire life turned upside down before, because it is like the great way of visualizing it is so like in February, like the world was kind of like, or the business market, I guess is the great way is more specific. It's like a game of Monopoly. It's like 3/4 of the way done, where everything's like a lot of stuff's bought up and everything's kind of established and structured, and there's not a lot of room for like growth or making big changes. And so it's kind of like the world in February. And then in March, when like COVID really kicked off, and it kind of like took the game board and did this and just flipped everything over and then disrupted the entire board, and everything got jumbled up in this kind of whole new game that like no one really expected. And so that sort of experience, like most people have not gone through something like that, so they don't really know how to respond. So I feel fortunate that I kind of had that happen to me personally when I got the brain tumor diagnosis, where it didn't feel real for 2 weeks. I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? This is just completely new experience and just mind blowing. So I've been in the same kind of mode that got me through chemo and radiation and all the treatment for the brain tumor since the shutdown happened, because it's very similar, just on a much bigger scale, to having basically the entire kind of trajectory of people's lives being completely upended and shifted. So I just focused on not stressing about things I can't control and focus on things I can deal with, and personal development sort of stuff, and just trying to move forward and changing my plans and updating stuff, but just not getting mired down in the negativity, and just keep moving forward. And when you need help, ask for help. When you see people you can help, offer to help them, and just the whole idea is just keep moving forward and help people get through it together. And I think the people that are able to have strong networks and good relationships and are able to rely on each other will come out of this just fine, and it will be very different. There's no necessarily back to normal is insane sort of thought. I think there's not going to really be anything like there was before in the world. There'll be a new situation for all the different like industries and lives and that kind of like and lifestyle and stuff. But I think people that don't worry too much about exactly what's going to happen and try and focus on what's like outside their sphere of influence, have the right attitude of being able to like adapt and be agile and willing to grow and change, are going to be ones that make it through this just fine, or even thrive through it. I've seen a ton of opportunities and like potential big silver linings for myself and for a lot of other people that could come out of this that just wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for the initially terrible occurrence or situation of COVID. There's a great story. I can't remember where I heard it the first time. I've read it in a couple of places, but it's kind of the story goes, there's like a farmer in the ancient China, and he has a bunch of horses, and so one day one of his horse runs away, and people are like, oh my gosh, the neighbor's like, oh, that's terrible, you lost your horse. And the guy says, okay, we'll see. And the next day the horse comes back with 7 wild horses that it brought back to the farm, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, you have all these new horses. And the farmer says, yeah, we'll see. And the next day the man's son is trying to tame one of the horses, and it bucks him off his back, and the son breaks his leg, and everyone goes, oh my gosh, that's terrible, your son broke his leg. That's he's going to be out or not able to work for so long. And the farmer says, yeah, we'll see. And then the next couple weeks later, the son's still healing, and a bunch of soldiers come to conscript men for the military, and they say, oh, this guy's a broken leg, we won't take him, he can stay at home. And all those guys are like, oh my gosh, that's totally, it's amazing, you didn't have to go and fight in the army. And so basically the guy's response is, we'll see. So what could seem like a terrible situation now could be full of opportunities for amazing growth and new like businesses or new jobs or new relationships. And just by having the right attitude, you'll be able to see those things. But if you're focusing on all the negative stuff, you'll miss all these great chances that life is presenting you with that don't come around that often. I think the stat I heard was, like in the business world, that 65% of the Fortune 1000 companies were formed during recessions. So if you're looking to find new work or like start a new business or do something, make a big change to your life, now is a great opportunity, because it's just rare that, I mean, it's not rare, but it's never happened on this scale before. I mean, the last big pandemic was Spanish flu in 1920. It seems like it's every 100 years. So it's like there's just opportunities like this don't come along very often. So it's you got to have a good attitude to see the opportunities when they arise. And it just, in general, a lot of people that are really successful and famous and have made great names for themselves and done great things. A lot of that came from them having the right attitude and seeing an opportunity when other people didn't see it necessarily, and being able to act on it when a strike when the iron's hot, as the old adage says.
That's right. I agree. Maintaining a positive mindset as well is truly important. Thank you for sharing that as well, Karl. Now tell us more about your principle in regards to we are all in this together.
Yeah, well, it definitely, that came from all the help I got dealing with the brain tumors and stuff. And it impressed upon me the importance of helping other people, especially people that, or even people that you don't necessarily feel that close to or know that well, because you never know how much you have in common, how much a little gesture of support can go a long way to making someone's day and just helping them get through a tough period. And there are a lot of people struggling these days, and so it's something that I'm really focusing on doing is encouraging people to think of ways they can do little things to help out people in their neighborhoods, and even the people they don't know if they're out and about like buying groceries or something like that, and just find little things you can do to make someone's life better, and donate and give to people in need. And just I think one of the other silver linings has been there's a surge in empathy compared to what, in the US at least, compared to what it used to be before COVID. We still have a long way to go before I think we're as empathic as this country needs to be. I think there's, especially in the first couple months of the shutdown, there were a lot of stories of people giving and helping each other. And I think those sorts of habits are ones that shouldn't be reserved just for like getting through a shutdown sort of thing. It could be making those things daily habits are a great way to not only help other people, but also just it feels good to support other people. And you never know who those people know. I'm a really big networker for my business. I do a ton of networking on Zoom these days. And it's really amazing and fun to meet people and see who they know and how much you can help them, even if they're on the other side of the country and like you've never met them before, but they might have a need that someone you could connect them with that could solve that need for them. And then both those people are better off, and they're going to want to reciprocate. Again, getting back to the brain, we have what allows us to be empathetic is we have something called mirror neurons in our brain. So if you see someone who's in a good mood, it makes you feel in a good mood because you mirror how they feel. And so if you want people to help you, if you feel like you need help with something, the best way to get people to want to help you is to help them and give, and not necessarily expecting something back right away, but just by kind of giving to people in your community and kind of putting that sort of actions out into the universe, you'll get back the same sort of sentiment. And it might not be from the exact person you gave to, but they might give to someone else, who gives to someone else, who gives to you. But you kind of started that chain of giving and support that it'll come back to you in ways you can't even predict and usually it's way more and way better than you would have initially expected when you first thought to give to help someone else out. So it's I've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to network with some amazing people in the San Francisco Bay Area when I live, and around the country thanks to Zoom. And it's been a lot of fun to see who I can connect and who I can help out. And that sort of attitude of giving for the sake of giving and wanting to help other people out, knowing that it'll eventually come back around you, but not initially tying any strings to your help, making it unconditional, is such a more rewarding and better way to approach life and relationships than having the opposite mindset of what can I take from people, how can I gain myself for myself, because just you'll burn through relationships and you'll ostracize yourself from your groups. And we can accomplish a lot more when people work together on things. And even if there's large differences in all sorts of like socioeconomic or demographic difference, or kind of beliefs differences, we have more in common than we do different anywhere around the world. With anyone around the world, there's even if you go to like a different country. That's what I've been fortunate to travel around to a lot of different places around the world. I've been to 5 out of 7 continents, and just seeing how people have similar kind of daily routine, daily challenges they go through, but different cultures and different people kind of handle it differently. But it's not like there's like a vastly different kind of rhythm to the day in different countries and different parts of the world. And even though they're on the other side of the planet, I don't speak the language. I don't really know the area, but they're just, you can tell that, and they just feel the connection as just human beings, and our needs are basically the same, and we have the similar goals and similar aspirations and similar values. It just they're often presented or labeled differently, but a lot of the time it's just those little people focus on those differences and try to blow them out of proportion, and it causes all these rifts that are really, really superficial when, if you look at them from like 10,000 foot kind of view and realize we're really not that different. And people just need to, I encourage people to, again, the kind of attitude thing is focus on what you have in common with people and not what you have different, what is like different between the two. And that sort of approach to relationships and giving and helping other people, really, it will just lead to a more fulfilling and happier life that is more beneficial for everyone around you, including yourself, just by caring and being willing to help other people out besides yourself.
That is very powerful. And I agree, volunteering and small acts of kindness truly matter. Now tell us more about the abundance mindset, Karl.
Well, it ties into that, to what I was just talking about before, is people that often they're thinking about themselves first and really trying to have a mindset where there's not enough to go around. There's a limited number of opportunities, limited number of kind of seats at the table, and they got to get one of those seats, and they are very negative mindset and not really, and are gonna be kind of mean-spirited and try and there's very like win-lose sort of deals that they're gonna look for, because they have to win, they have to be in front, they have to be the first, and compared to like an abundance mindset, where if you think even like in business, even these days where the economy is very is unprecedentedly shaken up and stuff, there's still there's still so many opportunities out there, and the overall I'd still consider us this compared to the rest of human history, there's no other time I'd want to be alive in a century or so. If you had to pick a different century to live in, I wouldn't pick any different one than this one, just because of how life overall is abundant even in these crazy times. And thinking from and things in that sense helps you realize that you can give to other people. You can like share your time and support other people, and you don't have to try and grab it all for yourself because you feel there's not enough. If you have that mindset that there's enough to go around, we can all succeed, and we can all get what we need. Like it ties into that idea of equity, and as everyone can get and have a life that's fulfilling and happy and safe, and all the kind of basics of human the human needs are available for everyone if we just are willing to put the effort in to make the right systems to provide for everybody and support people that need it, that haven't been able to get that support in the past. So I think having that abundance mindset is essential as part of the kind of overall attitude thing to be willing and have the open, like the ability to see when you can help other people and be willing to make those gestures of giving is when you have the mindset there's plenty to go around.
That's right. Being selfless truly matters. Now, Karl, can you tell us more about your company, Squatch and Stretch Productions?
Yeah, so Squash and Stretch Productions, we do animation and motion graphics for marketing and corporate communication. And we're kind of like a fractional animation department for marketing, branding, and PR companies. So those sorts of companies often offer like websites, social media, email, SEO marketing services, but they don't have a in-house animation team. And these days, especially with COVID pushing everything online, there's a great opportunity to reach a lot more people online with online marketing. And animation is a great way to, like I said, use stories to connect with people on that deep emotional level that gets really good results. So instead of those marketing, branding, PR companies having to hire on other people or stretch their teams too thin to include animation, they can basically bring me and my team on. We'll create the animated content for their clients, and that way their clients are going to get the benefits of high quality animated content on their existing marketing frameworks and that sort of stuff. And that way we're able to provide these high quality custom content solutions for people around the country that will help them not just like survive through these sorts of this situation, but also kind of thrive through it, because there's the time to really push marketing is when there's a recession. Like I said, that quote about or the stat about 65% of the Fortune 1000 companies are formed in recessions. When the market shook up like this, now's the time to really when people are slowing down, then now's time to kind of like push your marketing to kind of speed up. If you think of like a marathon runners, if you're like a minute ahead of someone, if you can push like a minute 5 ahead of someone, there's not a huge difference because you're running about the same pace. But if they start to slow down, you can speed up, and you can basically get so now you have like 5 minutes between the two of you, because when they were slowing down, you were speeding up. That's a huge difference. And so now's the time when a lot of companies are pulling back, and they're like, for some reason, thinking that cutting their marketing budgets can help them save money long term when marketing brings in more business. So when people are slowing down and cutting budgets, now is really the time to be bold and invest in marketing and really get your message out there. Because when things do start to return and business picks back up, it's a lot easier to maintain momentum through a recession than losing it and trying to build it back up. If you think like a merry-go-round in a playground, if you have a bunch of kids pile on and one kid's pushing it around to get it started, it takes a lot of effort to get that thing started. Once it's going, you hop on and it starts to slow down. And if you get off and start pushing again, it's easy to get it back up to speed. But if you let it go all the way down, you got to push just as hard to get it going again as before. So in the long run, it's less expensive and more effective to keep the momentum up than letting it die all the way down and then build it back up once things start to look better.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that, Karl. Now, Karl, what has given you the most joy and fulfillment in your life?
So I think it's seeing, one is kind of seeing the reaction to the stories I tell through animation, and then just seeing the results they have on my clients' lives is really fun, because it kind of combines, again, it's the storytelling and animation that I'm passionate about combined with the desire to help other people. I actually had a client a few years ago. He had started a high-end DJ business in Chicago, and he got bought out by a parent company. They moved him out to Oakland, California, to basically start a kind of another branch, a new location. And he really didn't like working for the parent company because they were very restrictive on what he could like spend money on, and on like the operating decisions. They were kind of micromanaging him, so I really didn't like it. So we made this animation to help him in his sales process. And after he started using it, he was able to actually increase his sales so much he was able to buy his company back from the parent company and be able to like run the business how he wanted to, and actually expanded it into more live music stuff. And he had the freedom to run the business that he wanted to, again, because the animation helped him. And so hearing that story was like when he was emailing me saying, I got my company back, this is so cool, I'm able to do. And that sort of thing is like, it's so cool to see just the effect the animation had on his business and his life. And how even like during the animation process, I sent him like a draft of it, and he was getting feedback from people. He's like, people love this. I'm like, it's not done yet. Don't show people till it's finished. And so those sorts of experiences where people are you can see the impact that the effort I'm putting into my business and my work is having on people's lives in a positive way is a great feeling. And just again, I when I do a lot of these little acts of kindness, just that get all those warm fuzzy feelings. I love those little warm fuzzy feelings, or like those are probably the best ones. I don't really have too many like huge examples of like the one time I was super happy. I think there's a lot of, it shows it's a sign of very fortunate and something I'm really grateful for is I have a lot of little small kind of moments of like happy stories throughout my life, where it's the fact that it kind of stays at that level high throughout, and it's not like a huge ups and downs with really bright happy moments, really sad moments. It's fairly been consistent, at least from the way I view things. I feel very fortunate that I'm able to have that sort of emotional stability in my life. I know a lot of people are struggling with mental and emotional health, and I urge them to talk about it and get help when they need it, because it's a real thing. I did deal with some anxiety after when I started college, because I was kind of adjusting to my new normal after like the brain tumors have been treated and stuff, and just kind of getting used to all the changes in my brain and life. And so I have a taste of that sort of like emotions not in control, and it's feeling kind of on edge and not myself. And so fortunately that was it was a temporary thing for me. And so I with how much stress people are feeling and how unusual the times are, I really encourage people, if you have someone you can talk to about it, and talk about it as much as you can. And there's a ton of helplines, like places people get help with like mental and emotional distress or issues. And definitely you're not the only person feeling this, and it's worth vocalizing how you're feeling to someone else that you trust, and not suffering in silence, because it is possible to be kind of happy and positive and optimistic even in these crazy times. But it's something that I've worked at, and I've had I've put effort into maintaining or kind of building this sort of mindset. It's not something kind of like click on and it's there. So but it's possible, and I want to make sure that people or encourage people not to let themselves get stuck in the mud. And especially, like I said at the beginning, it's how you feel is completely under your control, and there's a ton of resources out there, and I recommend people find something that works for them and use it, and be in control as you can of how you feel and how you think, and your own body and mind, because that's definitely something you can control, and not to worry too much about things that are outside of your control.
That's right. Now, I'm an overcomer of anxiety as well. And I found that anxiety, like fear, it's only as real as you believe it to be. And by saying that anxiety does not exist, it truly helps.
Yeah, well, that's another fascinating thing about the brain, and one reason why like visualization is such a powerful tool. If you want to have a certain outcome, then kind of visualizing it as real, your mind kind of makes it real because your brain can't distinguish between like what you like a dream and the reality. Like you kind of feel that it was real. You have the same emotional response when you. That's why like horror films make us feel scared, is because as the mirror neurons, we kind of feel like it's real, even though it's not real. It's on the screen. That's why like horror films make us feel scared. So if you're stressing about things that you can't control, and you're freaking out about something, you kind of your mind just kind of makes it real, and has such a visceral, emotional, and physical like impact on your body. But if you're able to understand that, there's a great book. It talks about like upper limit beliefs. I'm trying to remember let me look it up real quick. I read it not too long ago. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? But it talked about just how like there's a thing that our brains do because we're kind of used to, like you have like a comfort zone that we live in, and whenever we're trying to change or grow or do something different, we leave our comfort zone, and part of our brain's survival mechanism, again, that emotional part of our brains that still controls like the fight or flight, the as like a survival responses for us to stay within our comfort zones, even if it's a bad comfort zone, which is, so the book's called The Big Leap. And it talks about how if we're going to make big changes in our lives, we have to be aware of these limiting beliefs in our brain. And so if you like have a really big, happy moment, oftentimes you're going to realize you have a bunch of like negative, worrying, stressful thoughts. If you have if you get like hired for a new job, you have all these like worry and frets and stress because your brain's trying to keep you back in this, in your comfort zone of like where your life is now, and keep you from growing and making these big leaps, big changes in your life. And so if you're aware of what sort of responses you have, because I think the book outlines 4 different kind of types of limiting beliefs that people have based on their childhood growing up, if you're kind of aware of which ones you have, you can stop yourself from feeling those things and be able to keep expanding or like moving your comfort zone, so it gets bigger and bigger, and you actually achieve what you want to achieve. Because if you ever hear like people like self-sabotaging themselves, it's because subconsciously our brains will come up with reasons why we should fail, and if we don't check those, then we'll make mistakes, we'll do things wrong, we'll basically push ourselves back down to where we were, and not grow, and we'll get like fired from the new job, or we'll like sabotage a relationship, or do something to basically keep us unhappy or where we were and not grow the way we wanted to. It is a fascinating book. I've been working on that a lot lately because I'm a fretter. That's one of the 4 things, just worrying about things you can't control. So I'll have like a great meeting with someone, and I'll have a bunch of like negative thoughts start to pop up. I'm like, no, get down there. And I realize it's a limiting belief. My brain's trying to keep me back in my comfort zone because it feels like I'm growing too much. So I have to like swat those away. Like stop, don't fret about that stuff. It's not worth fretting about that. So and it's just it's one of those things that once you're aware of them, you can combat it. But it's something that most people don't realize is going on, and it's again another fascinating way our brains work. So yeah, it's called the Big Leap. It's a great book. Yeah, The Big Leap.
Ladies and gentlemen, make sure to check it out. The Big
Yeah,
Leap.
it's especially for people that are looking to change their lives and pivot, like their new careers, new industries, and or like making big life changes. These sorts of, your brain's gonna be in all sorts of limiting beliefs to try and protect you, but it's really, it's a leftover thing from in like hunter-gatherer days. Like if you saw like the bushes rustling on like the savannah, the people that weren't afraid it was a lion got eaten sometimes, and so the people that were afraid and ran away lived, and so they passed on the gene. So like we still have that kind of that primal like fight or flight, afraid of the unknown, because that was a survival mechanism back when most things out in the world would kill us. These days, despite COVID, most things you encounter in the world are not a threat to your life, but we still have that same fight or flight response, and like, or is it going to kill me response to new things? new people, new experiences. And so that sort of part of our brains is what causes us to self-sabotage and have these limiting beliefs that keep us where we know we can survive. And in some cases, it just keeps you in like mediocrity. In some cases, it's like why people have been like victims of domestic abuse. They keep getting in relationships with people that treat them like abuse them because their brains don't know how to survive in any relationships besides ones with domestic abusers, which is horrifying. But that's how the brain works. And so they don't know how to survive in a healthy relationship, so they sabotage those and find one that's, and it's a reason why you need to, or people need help with those sorts of things. It's important to talk about it and be aware of that's how your brain works. And that way, once you're kind of aware of it and can do something about it, you're able to counteract it and achieve that growth, achieve that change. And especially these days with so much change going on, it's a very important and timely skill to be working on as the new world we're in starts to shape out and stuff, so you can kind of find your new situation and expanded that. And hopefully it'll be a step up that you didn't realize you're capable of because you never really pushed from some, like there's the whole hero's journey story archetype. Think of like the first Star Wars film. If you haven't seen it, spoiler alert. But so in the classic hero's journey story arc, there's a hero and they're in a certain like life situation that they're not happy with, but there's a call to action where someone says, okay, you can go change your life now, and the hero refuses because they're stuck and they don't change until something else, some big event forces them to change. So in the first Star Wars film, it's Luke's aunt and uncle get killed by the stormtroopers. So basically his home's destroyed, he has to leave. Some outside force pushes him into action, and he goes on the journey and becomes a better person. So like it usually takes that big of a push for us to get out of our comfort zones, because our brains keep us in those little safe what we know. We don't want to leave because it's what we know. And so it takes something really big to force us out, to force us to grow. And we have to overcome the limiting beliefs, and usually have a guide helping us through it. And we overcome these challenges and get back to a better, achieved growth at the end of the story. Well, COVID just took the whole world and pushed it out of its comfort zone on a scale that's never been seen before. And so there's tons of opportunities to grow, and then the home or the life people knew before is gone. And so I think we're all collectively on this kind of hero's journey of growth, and there's a ton of opportunities for people to find a new life for themselves that's better than it was before, and they probably wouldn't have thought to or been able to like make this change without some big outside force pushing. And everyone's gotten pushed at once. There's this huge opportunity, and I think the people that are going to be really successful going forward are ones that see this as an opportunity for growth, and they have a guide, someone who can help them find their path and make these changes and really achieve the big goals they had for themselves. Maybe they've been dreaming about it for their entire life or for years and hadn't never been able to make it happen because they're kind of entrenched in their ways. And now there's no going back to the way things were. So might as well go after those big audacious goals that you had and make your life the one you always dreamed of, instead of trying to go back to the way things were. I
love it. Now, Karl, was there a time in your life journey where you experienced an aha moment?
I told about it in the first story I told, when I having that auditorium of people go, oh my gosh, that's a laugh at the joke in my animation. I was like, and I had like the hair on the back of my neck stand up, and I got like that adrenaline rush of like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I can't believe they all laughed at this joke. I made this thing and had this big like positive effect on a bunch of people I didn't know, like 990 people out of 1,000 or whatever. Is that kind of like rush I felt of having such a big impact on people that I would never meet again, probably was just like oh my gosh, I need more of this. And there was like the validation that I was on the right track with my career and what I wanted to be doing. And I pivoted something. Originally I wanted to go into like feature film production. and I kind of realized that it wasn't quite as on track as what I'm doing now, which is, I think, a lot bigger opportunity to help more people than just like make them feel happy for like while they're watching a film sort of thing. But I think that still, it showed me that the storytelling and animation would be a great tool for influencing and having a bigger impact on the world around me. So that was a big aha moment where I just had like, again, like that prime, like the visceral, like hair on the back of my neck stand up, and like the heartbeat, and like the, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I can't believe that happened. I gotta do this more. So that was probably my biggest aha moment. It was such a, like, yeah, I yet to have that sort of bigger response again, but I kind of know that I've been having a bunch of small ones like that as I work on these projects. But there's some things I'm working on now that I signed an NDA for, so I can't really mention them at all. I can't mention them at all. That could have a similar sort of, the phrase I like to use is, I got it from Darren Hardy, that he's an awesome success coach. I've been using his tools and his programs. He has a phrase that I got called "Dent the Universe."
Tell us about it.
What?
Tell us about it.
So the whole idea is that if you're going to do something, have like a big enough impact on the world, like your business or your life or like your volunteering, that it's not just you don't like leave a mark on the world. You basically dent the universe. Basically, you have a big impact, and it's such a big change to the way things are done. Hopefully, for a positive sense, that it kind of leaves a dent in the universe. And when people look back on history, or they see like, okay, there's this big impact that was made, that for the better, and then this person kind of had that sort of, here's who was kind of the cause of that change, that big impact. And so it's, when I'm thinking about my business and some of the other things I'm working on, I'm trying to, the scope of an impact I want to have is that size of that scope is, I want to not just like be, it starts with having impact, like helping your community, and I'm starting small and building up, but how big to dream, how big to aim, isn't that and aim so high you're gonna, like, where you want your impact on the world to be something that kind of dents the universe and makes things so much better that it's considered that size of an impact. And so I'm working on getting there with my company, and I'm working on another project again that could have that sort of big impact on the world, and I'm really excited for that. And it's stuff like it all ties into giving and helping other people, and making the world a better place than we found it. And so I'm really excited for the stuff I'll be working on, and the opportunities that I have going forward, despite all the craziness and uncertainty and stuff. I still feel very fortunate, and that I'm optimistic for what the future holds.
That is absolutely amazing. Now, what is your best advice to the audience for walking with purpose and living a life of happiness, Karl?
Well, I think, walking with purpose is, it kind of ties into mindfulness, and just having goals and like a plan, and and not just goals, but like a system to implement them, and then making sure that you're using your time well. I used to procrastinate a lot. And so that's actually something that I'd recommend people check out is Darren Hardy. He has a bunch of programs. He even does a little, they're called little Darren Daily videos. Every weekday he sends out a little video and some coaching tips every morning. And so I've been doing a lot of that stuff and kind of building strategies and systems for my business, and just habits for my life that make sure that I'm spending my time with purpose and on things that are going to help me achieve my goals. I think there's a lot of time in the past where I've been just spent kind of watching TV, or like doing things that weren't really, they were fun, but they weren't really, I didn't have the right balance of productivity to kind of like leisure, or even just like, people often think that, well, I'm really busy, so I must be doing good stuff. A lot of busy work is not really productive, not really moving people towards their goals. And so I've been focusing more on being productive and less on busy. I try not, people often say, oh, how was your day? I was really busy. And I was like, well, was it productive busy or just busy? And they go, oh, just busy. And I'm like, yeah. So I kind of, I mean, busy is a 4-letter word, but it's also like a 4-letter word. Whereas I don't want to say I'm busy. I want to say I've had a productive day. So I'm really mindful of kind of when I'm walking with purpose. I'm because everyone has 24 hours in a day, and how successful like Bill Gates or Richard Branson are like people that are really impactful. People who are denting the universe. They still have the same amount of time as everyone else, but they spend it and use it with purpose, and they're very focused on what they're going to do, and they find the activities that are the most that are most of the best ROI for helping them achieve the goals or helping them get what they're trying to accomplish done, and then they don't do the other stuff, and or like either they're delegating to someone else or they're just not doing it. And so a lot of it is just saying no to things. Like I was offered by someone on LinkedIn, someone reached out to me saying they wanted help with like an animation series that was like but it was kind of like it'd be a big time thing, and it wasn't like necessarily it was like very early on in the process, and it was something that looked cool, but it was just like I already had these other 2 things going on with my company and this other thing, and I had to say no to that because it wasn't going to be, these 2 other things are more important for me, and this thing wasn't one of them, so I had to say no to it. Even though when I first thought, I was like, oh, that's cool, and I started like saying like, no, wait, I can't say yes to this because I have these other 2 things. So it was that sort of purpose to my decision making and time use that is how I see walking with purpose. And what was the other one?
And living a life of happiness.
Yeah. So I think a life, again, it comes down to how you feel and how you see the world are very much focused on impacted by what you take into your minds. If you're watching like a lot of like negative news stories, or having a lot of like arguing with people online, or listening to people in your life that are like complaining a lot, or like really negative people, and like a lot of people in your family are negative mindset, you're putting all this kind of garbage into your head that's going to make you feel and see things that are in a negative, unhappy light. But if you focus on like optimistic and positive things, and do things that are helping other people, and or positive actions, and focus on how you really want to feel, or taking things that make you feel happy, then you'll get that sort of mindset by controlling kind of what you put into your mind, and what sort of content you consume, what sort of who you hang out with, and especially, I mean, it's tougher in quarantine because you can't necessarily move around as much. You're kind of stuck with the people in your family right now, but just being more mindful of and aware of your emotions, and what sort of content you're consuming. You do have control over how you feel, and so I think living life, and it's basically how you feel, it will impact the actions you take. And so also there's a kind of part of it is reverse. If you are doing things that are helping other people feel good, because of the mirror neurons, you're going to feel good with them, because you'll see them smile and they'll make you want to smile, and you'll have like a little feedback loop of positivity by helping other people and being the good you want to see in the world. It'll come back around, and you'll feel better and happier if you make others happy. So it's for each person's kind of has their own unique situation, I understand, and I am aware of how fortunate my life has been, and the privilege I've enjoyed, that I'm very aware of now, and working on rectifying in a way. but I think that there's everyone has the ability or the opportunity to control their emotional state and build the sort of relationships they want to have with people and have that happiness mindset and have a happy life. It's definitely not, people have some people have a lot more of an uphill battle than others, and I'm uh, I feel like I'm part of the effort to rectify that and make some big changes. And and so I think that I'm optimistic that it can be done. It's going to take a couple generations of time to really make the sort of changes we need in this country to actually happen. And but I think we're on the correct path with a lot of the stuff going on right now that I think could be another really big silver lining of the whole COVID situation is just, again, people's empathy being upped and people realizing that we need to help each other out and help people that are less fortunate who don't have the same opportunities or don't have the same like, you know, access to things that I have that I took for granted and I got just because of who I was born to. And it's just I want to be part of the solution, and it is what fits into my values and what I want to, the impact I want to have on my life is to be someone that sees a problem that needs fixing and works to fix that with other people. And so I'm taking steps to make that happen now. And again, that's just ties into the dent the universe thing that I really want my life to have on the world.
That is absolutely amazing. And Karl, thank you so much for being a guest on Walk With Me podcast and sharing your story, your advice, and your tips. I really appreciate you. Now, where can the audience find you?
So you can find me on my website is www.squashandstretch.net, all letters spelled out. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. So it's linkedin.com/LIN/K Pontau, KPONTAU. And yeah, that's probably the two best places to find me.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure to check out Karl at squashandstretch.net. And Karl, thank you again so much for being a guest on Walk With Me podcast. You have a blessed day.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. You're welcome.